Hey, in this lesson, we're going to be looking at the 3D transform. So similar to what we saw with the 2D transform, the 3D also incorporates the Z axis. So there's X, which is the horizontal, vertical is Y, and then Z is usually used for depth, so moving it back and forth. So let's go back into our content that we created last time, and using the transform property, we're going to apply some different values to them, and this is where we're going to add in the ability to do the rotation and the transform. So I'm going to get rid of what we covered in the last lesson and clear out all the transforms of the elements. I'll keep the colors the same so we don't have to go through rewriting all of that stuff, and just go and refresh our document. So there's our original document. We've got all of the elements. They've been sized and they're nice and neatly laid out on the page. So the first one that we want to look at is going to be the transform, and applying the transform rotate X. So rotate X and rotate Y. So rotate X is specified for the X axis, whereas Y is for the Y axis, and that's the vertical. X is for the horizontal. So if we want to move it on the X axis, we can rotate it that way. And how about we do a 100-degree rotate? And I know it's a little bit hard to tell, but it has rotated it. And remember, this is only along the X axis. So this is a 100-degree rotate, and essentially what it's done is it's shrunk it, but it's turned it upside down. So if we go over, and if we do something like 120 degrees, you're going to see that the content is actually getting flipped, and it's going to start getting larger. So let's go all the way up to 180 degrees rotation. And this is only taking into account the X axis. So this is picturing how it would look like if we rotated it only on the X axis, and essentially what that's doing is that's flipping it upside down and mirroring the content. There's also the rotate on the Y axis. So let's rotate number 2 on Y, and we'll do the same 180 degrees. So that should flip Y. It should flip on the, and 180 is essentially flipping it. Y-axis, and if you picture the axis is in the middle there, it's flipping on the Y. So what it's doing is it's reversing on the content, so it's giving it a mirror image. There's also on the Z-axis, so you can do a transform on the Z-axis. So let's go to number 3 and rotate Z, and we'll do 180 degrees on Z. So what that's doing is that's flipping it, but also keeping the content the same. So it's basically turning it upside down, but keeping it going this way, whereas the rotate on the X-axis is rotating it. So if you picture the Z-axis is where the content is swinging on, it's going to rotate it in this way. And also reverse the way that the content is being output in a mirror type image. And there's also a few 3Ds where you can scale different 3D values. So let's do a transform. All 3 values, the X, the Y, and the Z, for scaling. So if I want to scale it on 1 for the X, 2 for the Y, and 3 for the Z, that will scale on those axes. Let's go back out and see what happens. So that essentially scaled the element size. And sometimes it does take a little bit of trial and error back and forth in order to get the right scaling and the feel for it. So let's go into 5, transform, and we're going to scale to the Z. So I'm going to scale it 3 times to Z, number 5. So that essentially just scaled it and made it a little bit larger, and that's transforming it on Z. And admittedly, on the Z-axis, it is a little bit hard to gauge what the transformation is going to look like. And with X and Y, it's a little bit more straightforward because that's the X and horizontal axis, and the Y is the vertical axis. So this was just a quick lesson on the 3D perspective. That is another option to rotating and transforming your elements.